They won and still got criticized. Now it finally exploded. NC fans furious as the same mistakes keep happening. What if I told you that sometimes the most dangerous victory isn't a loss? It's a win that hides all your problems. A win that makes people celebrate for a few hours while ignoring the warning signs. A win that convinces everyone everything is fine, until the exact same issues come back and destroy you days later. That's exactly what happened to the NC Dinos. Just 2 days ago, NC fans were celebrating a dramatic walk-off victory against LG. The players were smiling. The crowd was cheering. The standings looked better. And on the surface, everything seemed perfect. But strangely enough, many NC fans weren't celebrating as enthusiastically as you might expect after such an emotional victory. In fact, some fans were worried, very worried, because while the final result looked great, the process that led to that victory revealed several major problems. Problems that many supporters believed would eventually come back to haunt the team. And unfortunately for NC, that's exactly what happened. Only 2 days later, against Kiwoom, the same questionable decisions appeared once again. The same concerns returned. The same frustrations resurfaced. And this time, there was no dramatic walk-off hit to save the day. This time, NC paid the price. Today, we're going to break down why so many fans are upset, why criticism of manager Lee Ho-jun continues to grow, and why supporters believe the same mistakes are being repeated over and over again. Because right now, the biggest conversation surrounding NC isn't simply about losing a baseball game. It's about whether the team is actually learning from its mistakes. Let's begin with the game against LG, because that's where this story really started. When NC faced LG just a couple of days ago, everything seemed to be going according to plan early in the game. The offense came out aggressive. The bats were alive. Momentum quickly shifted toward North Carolina. One of the biggest highlights came from Davidson. His home run immediately energized the team and gave fans plenty of reasons to feel optimistic. The offense continued putting pressure on LG's starting pitcher. At multiple points, it looked like NC was on the verge of taking complete control. Many observers believed this should have been a relatively comfortable victory. Not an easy victory, but certainly a manageable one. The type of game where a team builds an early lead, manages its pitching staff carefully, and closes things out without unnecessary drama. Instead, things began taking a familiar turn. A turn that many NC fans have seen before. And that's where criticism toward manager Lee Ho-jun started to intensify. One of the first decisions that puzzled fans involved starting pitcher Todotsuki. At that stage of the season, concerns about fatigue were already being discussed. The pitcher had been working frequently. Some signs of wear were becoming visible. Many fans believed the coaching staff needed to manage his workload more carefully. Yet despite those concerns, Todotsuki remained in the game. The innings continued. The pitch count climbed. And eventually trouble arrived. Only after consecutive hits were allowed did the decision finally come to remove him. For many fans, that was already frustrating enough. But unfortunately, the biggest problem was still coming. After Todotsuki left the game, Bae Jae-hwan entered. And almost immediately, disaster struck. One pitch. That's all it took. A 3-run home run. Just like that, the entire atmosphere of the game changed. What had looked like a comfortable situation suddenly became dangerous. Momentum shifted. Confidence disappeared. And fans watching at home immediately began questioning the decision-making process. Why wait so long? Why allow the situation to become more dangerous before making a move? Why bring in a pitcher who hadn't exactly inspired confidence in recent appearances? Those questions started flooding social media. But amazingly, the story wasn't over yet, because another controversial decision followed shortly afterward. At that point, Lim Ji-min entered the game. Now, under normal circumstances, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Except these weren't normal circumstances. Recently, Lim Ji-min had already been struggling. Blown saves had become a recurring issue. Fans were nervous every time he appeared. Confidence was clearly declining. Yet despite all of that, he was once again placed in a crucial situation. And predictably, criticism followed immediately. Supporters weren't necessarily angry because a particular player entered the game. They were angry because they felt the warning signs had already been there. They felt the coaching staff was ignoring what everyone else could see. Then came another decision that fans couldn't understand. One of the hottest hitters on the roster was removed. Meanwhile, another player was sent in as a pinch hitter. At a moment when offensive momentum mattered most, many fans believed the wrong choice had been made. And then there was Davidson. Perhaps the most confusing decision of all. Davidson had been outstanding. A home run. A triple. Arguably the most dangerous bat in the lineup that day. Yet even he found himself removed later in the game. To many supporters, that move felt almost impossible to explain. When a player is dominating offensively, conventional baseball wisdom usually says one thing. Leave him in the game. Let him keep hitting. Let him remain a threat. Instead, NC went in a different direction. And although the team eventually escaped with a victory thanks to Choi Jung-won's dramatic walk-off hit, many fans weren't convinced. In fact, some supporters made a statement that would become surprisingly prophetic. They said, "We didn't win this game, we survived it." At the time, some people dismissed those comments. After all, a win is a win. The standings don't care how pretty it looked. The record books only show victories and defeats. But deep down, many fans felt something wasn't right. They believed the underlying problems were still there. And 2 days later, they were proven right. When NC faced Kiwoom on June 9th, the early stages of the game actually looked promising. The offense was productive. The team managed to score multiple runs. Momentum seemed to be moving in the right direction. For a moment, it looked like NC might put together a convincing performance. But then another decision raised eyebrows. And this one may have frustrated fans more than anything that happened against LG, because it involved one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball. Oh Jang-han had been on fire. There is simply no other way to describe it. Over the previous week, he had been hitting above .500. Every time he stepped into the batter's box, he looked dangerous. Pitchers were struggling to get him out. Fans were excited whenever he came up to hit. At that moment, he was arguably the hottest hitter on the entire roster. Yet on this particular day, after failing to record a hit in just 2 plate appearances, he was replaced. A pinch hitter was called. And just like that, one of the team's most productive bats was gone. The result? A harmless fly ball. Opportunity wasted. Momentum lost. And fans once again found themselves asking the same question. Why? Why are young players being removed so quickly? Why does it feel like one bad inning or one hitless stretch immediately leads to a change? Why talk about trusting and developing young talent if those players aren't given the chance to work through adversity? For many supporters, this has become one of the biggest frustrations of the season. Because player development requires patience, confidence requires trust, and trust becomes difficult to build when every small mistake leads to immediate consequences. Unfortunately, things were about to get even worse.